During the fire, H's sister gave birth to save me, but she was seriously injured and paralyzed. Every day, I work 8 jobs, trying my best to save money to buy a prosthetic leg for her. Until one day, when I was so tired and dizzy, suddenly a few comments appeared before my eyes. This firecracker guy is really stupid. He still doesn't know that at that time. The female lead risked her life to take him out because she was afraid he would run into the room and discover something. Why does he have such a stupid younger brother? It's no wonder the female lead is addicted to pretending to be cheated. Right now, people are happily playing with their neighbor at the ski resort. The money he saved was not enough to buy a bottle of water there. I used myself, dragging my heavy body, to run to the ski area. From afar, I saw Lam Mok Dew taking long steps towards the rest area expertly, taking off the ski mask, revealing a radiant face, completely different from the usual pale, sluggish face due to disability. A young man held a bottle of water and ran in front of her, his eyes shining as he looked at her. She took the bottle of water and responded with a gentle smile. A group of people gradually walked out of the ski area, chatting excitedly, completely ignoring me standing in the dark. I heard a woman's laughter. How long are you planning to trick Lam Vangi? Last week, I saw him standing on the side of the road distributing leaflets late at night. The cold wind blowing turned his lips purple. But Lam Mok Dew's voice was cold and emotionless. At first, his parents died because of his stubbornness. Shouldn't he suffer a little to remember the lesson? Everyone exclaimed, "I'm so unconvinced. You're so cruel to your younger brother." I stood on the side of the road, feeling cold all over my body. The day my parents passed away, someone who only knew me sent a text message telling them to drive to the river. I cried and explained to Lam Mok Dew at the funeral. She hugged me, patted my back, and said, "It's okay, little brother, no one believes it. Only I believe what you say." But it turned out she didn't believe it. She never believed it. It turned out that my 6 years of struggling in the mud were nothing more than her revenge. The group of people passed beside me and gradually moved away. I looked at the back of Lam Mok Dew, the woman who has always been in a wheelchair over the years. Now, the tall teacher's figure is so slim that I almost don't dare to recognize it. Finally, I still spoke, my voice bitter in my throat. "Are you having fun?" My voice was cold. The woman who was chatting with someone suddenly stopped walking. I looked at her stiff figure for 3 seconds, not moving. After a while, she turned around. The bottom of his eyes flashed with disgust and panic, then quickly turned cold. I heard her voice emotionless, as if nothing had ever happened. Not bad, like a small thorn in my heart. Next to him, someone awkwardly said, "Lam Vangi, listen to us." Lam Mok Dew remained silent and interrupted. Other people have already seen it, so what else is there to explain? Surely everything that needs to be heard has already been heard, right? She said, then looked back at me with sarcasm. Even though I knew she wouldn't believe me, I still tried to open my mouth. That year, the text message my parents received was actually not sent by me. Lam Mok Dew looked disgusted. "Lam Vangi, you're 25 years old this year. All these years, you've been doing it without daring to admit it." Too many explanations of dissatisfaction and frustration rose up in my throat. But in the end, she was still suppressed by her eyes full of hatred and undisguised hatred. After a long while, I finally bowed my head. "Yes, I know. If this answer alone will satisfy you, then let it be as you wish." So Lam Mok Dew smiled slightly. "Zhang Triad is right. You should suffer more to learn how to grow up." I raised my head and just met Zhang Triad's eyes. Innocent, but unable to hide his pride. In the past, when my parents were still alive, Zhang's house was a close place. Zhang Triad is the youngest son of the Zhang family, always following Lam Mok Dew, calling him sister. At that time, I would not be satisfied and chase him away, but Lam Mok Dew would never pay attention. Now, they can be just as close. I stood in place for a long time. When he regained consciousness, Lam Mok Dew's figure had disappeared. A long time ago, Ms. Bachnan sent a text message on her phone. "Do you really not want to study abroad in Fukuoka? In the past, you dropped out of school in your 3rd year, and Professor Tran was very sorry. This time, I specially asked for an extra spot for you. All expenses are covered." I looked at that message, a bit stunned. The other party sent a message again. "Can't bear to leave Lam Mok Dew." Finally, I didn't hesitate anymore and raised my hand to reply to the message. I've thought about it carefully. I agree. In the air, The comment lines began to flow crazily again. That's great. Finally, my younger brother, Canon FOI, is about to go abroad. So is the female lead about to. Recognize my brother Try It as my biological younger brother? Cough cough. What a younger brother. Isn't it better to see sweet love? But isn't this what brothers are about? Jong Try It and the female lead are not related by blood. Believe me, there will definitely be a love line for them later. The frantically scrolling lines made my eyes dizzy, along with my thoughts gradually becoming hazy. Some information about the forced storyline flooded into my mind. I just learned that the world I live in is a twisted novel, and I, as the heroine's younger brother, will soon die or disappear. The heartbroken female lead will see the male lead Jong Try It as a substitute younger brother and gradually develop feelings. The two of you will come together, and the traces of my existence will gradually be completely erased. No one will pay attention anymore. So leaving the country completely was my only option to avoid death. For more than 20 years, Lam Mok Dew and I relied on each other, but it was just a passing mention in the book. I wandered the streets aimlessly. The cold wind seemed to blow into my bones, until the phone suddenly rang. I looked at the screen showing the incoming call was her. For a moment, I even felt dizzy. From the other side came Lam Mok Dew's cold voice. Go back to your old house and get a prosthetic leg. Feeling that the matter had been exposed, she no longer acted. Obviously, the previous story that she lied about the company going bankrupt and selling her old house to pay off debt was also false. I remember the old room I rented for less than $2 million a month that I lived in for the past year. It was also difficult for Lam Mok Dew to live there. I'm not going home anymore. My things are still at the rented house. After all, there are only a few days left until we go abroad. The other party laughed coldly and then hung up the phone directly. I have a bad feeling, but I can't say clearly what's wrong. By the time I got back to the small, narrow rented apartment and opened the door, my bedroom was a mess. The middle-aged landlady was digging out my last shirt and conveniently threw it on the ground. My belongings were also ransacked in the drawer and scattered everywhere. Before I could question him, the landlady heard the movement and turned around to look at me angrily. Do you still dare to come back? She rushed forward and grabbed my arm with one hand. If you don't pay the rent today, don't leave here. I stood still, suddenly remembering the previous monthly rent. I was afraid that Lam Mok Dew would forget, so I always reminded her to transfer it to the landlord because I was worried. She doesn't have a job, so she's not in a good mood. I'm also used to transferring money. I earned it for you, but I was so busy this month that I forgot to remind you. The landlady criticized your sister for coming to pack her things, saying frankly that she had no money. Now you're pretending to be stupid. I've already seen them. You guys are going to steal money. My mind was spinning, suddenly remembering Lam Mok Dew's cold laughter when hanging up the phone. All of this must have been within her expectations. Pretending for 5 years, perhaps she was already anxious to vent all her hatred. In a fit of dizziness, I tried to reach into my bag to take out money, but before I could open my mouth, the landlady snatched it away. I almost had to hold on to the wall to get into the bedroom, picking up clothes on the floor. Stomach is hungry and painful. I plan to pack up a few things and leave. I can only think of other things later. The landlady got the money, but her voice did not stop. I've never seen two brothers renting a bedroom, and your sister dresses smartly and doesn't look short of money. You should compensate me for cleaning my room. My head was pounding. I tried to carry my luggage and leave the rented apartment. After walking a few steps out the door, my eyes suddenly turned black and I fell down. When I woke up, I knew I had been taken to the hospital by a kind person. Dr. Neum Kok informed me that I have serious stomach ulcers and gastrointestinal bleeding. If you don't get good hospital treatment, you may get cancer. I touched my pocket. The more than 200 dong I had just earned today had almost been taken by the landlady. I cringed. My face turned red with embarrassment. I'd like the doctor to prescribe me some cheap painkillers. Leaving the hospital, passing by a small convenience store, I saw them throwing expired loaves of bread into the trash on the side of the road. I looked for a long moment, and when I realized what I was thinking, I picked up an unopened loaf of bread. Have I fallen to this level? Suddenly I really wanted to laugh, but I couldn't laugh. I squatted on the side of the road and looked at it for a long time before finally opening it and eating it. The phone vibrates, displaying a WeChat message. I opened it and saw that Lam Mok Dew had a message that had been revoked. Looking for some reason, my vision became blurry. In fact, it's more likely that she just sent it by mistake, took the message, or that message was just to scold and mock me. But someone like me, who is good at deceiving herself, thought that perhaps she would be a little worried about me at this late hour. I quietly touched my bag. I was already out of money. In the end, he still called Lam mocked you, calling several times, before the other party finally picked up. The night wind was so strong. I opened my mouth and said a bit unclearly, "Can you come pick me up? I don't have money for a taxi, so I can't walk to my old house." The other party was silent for a long time before bursting into laughter, his voice probably carrying the joy of victory and gloating. "What's wrong? You don't have legs yourself." Without any intention of negotiating, I was speechless until I heard a beeping sound and hung up on the other side. In fact, for 5 years, Lam mocked you pretended to be paralyzed, and she was also not nice to me. She would pour the bowl of soup I stayed up all night to cook for her. After I worked late at night, she would laugh and say the same thing to me. "When I'm tired, then please take me to the hospital." "What's wrong, Lam Van Gie, don't you have legs?" But at that time, I consoled myself that she treated me poorly because of her legs and depression. Now I understand, she simply hates me. She believes that I sent messages that killed my parents, so she doesn't want me to live well. Actually, maybe I should have realized that sooner. The cold wind blew. I finished eating a loaf of bread. It was late at night. The streets were quiet. Thinking that Lam mocked you would definitely not come, I really had no choice but to grit my teeth and call Ms. Bok Nin. It was quite embarrassing to say it out loud. It was probably midnight over there, but she picked up the phone very quickly. I didn't want to disturb her sleep. Even though it was difficult for me to speak, I still went straight to the point and asked if she could lend me some money. The other side was silent for a long time. My face started to heat up. Suddenly, I remembered that in the past few years, since she went to study abroad, she and I had almost no contact. Suddenly borrowing money like that didn't make sense. I quickly wanted to stop the topic and end the call, until a voice came from the other side. "Where are you?" My consciousness was vague. I even began to not be able to distinguish whether Bok Nin or Lam mocked you was talking on the other side. I vaguely gave the address and ended the call. Actually, I knew no one would come. Bok Nin is abroad. Asking for my address is probably just to send it to Lam mocked you. In a hazy vision, those comments began to appear en masse again. "Oh, this trouble wants to pretend to be pitiful to call the heroine over." Fortunately, the female lead is not an idiot. She knows that today is Zhang Triet's birthday, so she has to be by his side. So today is Zhang Triet's birthday? In the past, Lam mocked you was often with me on my birthday. My parents didn't like being with us, but she ordered a cake shaped like a ghost character for me and bought me graphics and game consoles. How many years has it been since she was with me on my birthday? I kept thinking, but couldn't remember. As I sat on the side of the road, almost falling asleep, I vaguely heard someone calling my name, Lam Van Gie. I tried to raise my head and saw a tall figure walking towards me. I tried to open my eyes wide to see clearly who was coming, until he vaguely heard Bok Nin's voice. "What's wrong with you?" I wanted to ask her why she suddenly returned home and when she returned, but as soon as she opened her mouth, stomach acid rose to her throat. Before she could stand up and run to the trash can, vomit splattered all over Bok Nin's sleeve. She was about to help me. I apologized. Sorry. With vague consciousness, I kept repeating those 3 words. Bok Nin seemed to say something to me, but I couldn't hear clearly, only vaguely heard the words hospital. Maybe she wanted to take me to the hospital. She helped me stand up and instinctively refused. "I'm not going to the hospital." Lam mocked you pretended to be paralyzed for 5 years and was also treated in the hospital for 5 years. During those 5 years, most of the money I earned with my life was paid to the counter of that private hospital. I don't know what agreement they had with Lam mocked you to act with her for 5 years. I don't want to go there anymore. Bok Nin helped me to the car and said, "Let's go to my house first." Until a cold voice rang out not far ahead. I tried to raise my head on the not-so-bright road. I had to look for a long time before I reluctantly recognized Lam mocked you's cold face. Her skin was pale white. Maybe because I was in a hurry to get here, I didn't notice that Zhang Triet's birthday was still stuck on his left cheek. She must have left there midway. Face, of course, cannot be beautiful. I turned away and said to Bok Nin, "I'm sorry." The car door opened. I was about to get in the car. Behind is Lam mocked you. always cold, rarely looking so out of control. Lam Van decided to stop. I didn't care and went straight to the car. Before closing the car door, I heard Lam Mok Du's voice full of hatred. For killing my parents, Lam Van Gi, when you were alone with Bok Nin late at night, didn't you have nightmares? My hand holding the car door suddenly stiffened as if a needle was piercing my heart. I don't understand why she dragged Bok Nin in. Maybe she was really angry to the point of losing her mind. Through the car window, I saw Lam Mok Du's angry face. The wind blew her hair across her forehead. She stood alone there, exuding loneliness. I closed my eyes. Her face instantly disappeared from view, leaving only blackness in that darkness. I felt like I saw a scene from many years ago, when after school, Lam Mok Du held my hand tightly and took me home. Since I started having memories, the memories of my parents have been really blurry. They don't like me, hate being around me. When I was 12 years old, I overheard the housekeeper say that when my mother was pregnant with me, she went to the hospital several times to have an abortion, but she was anemic. My fate is really great. That day, it was New Year's Eve. My parents are abroad to celebrate the new year. In the house, besides the maid, there are only me and Lam Mok Du. I was jealous of the other children that night, with their parents next to them setting off fireworks. Lam Mok Du immediately bought fireworks, held my hand, and said to go to the terrace to play. When passing through the kitchen, we often heard the maid calling on the phone, with a mocking tone, taking me as the subject. While talking, I held the fireworks in my arms and couldn't help but burst into tears. Lam Mok Du, 15 years old at that time, rushed into the kitchen, his face turned black. With one hand he grabbed the maid's phone and threw it hard on the ground. Phone screen broken. The maid was angry and raised her hand to turn her off. I instinctively rushed to block the front, then felt a burning pain spread quickly across my face. When I regained consciousness, the maid screamed miserably and hugged her arms. Fresh blood flowed through her small fingers, dripping onto the white tile floor, looking horrifying. Lam Mok Du stood in front of her, his hand holding the kitchen knife shaking, his eyes bloodshot. I called her name several times, but she didn't move, as if petrified in place. The next day, my parents rushed back from abroad, gave the maid some money, and took Lam Mok Du and me to apologize. Lam Mok Du shielded me from behind, coldly glaring at the maid. Next time you say bad things about Tugi, watch out for your other arm. Dad angrily slapped her in the face. Mom remained silent. After a long while, her mother spoke up. Send Lam Van Gi away. Let someone else take care of him. I was so scared that my mind went blank, but the fear of my parents was deeply ingrained in my bones from childhood until adulthood, making me not dare to refute their words. Lam Mok Du turned around and grabbed my wrist with one hand. If Mom and Dad send her away, I will go with her. His parents got angry, threw Lam Mok Du a bank card, and flew abroad that night. After that, Lam Mok Du fired the maid. We did not dare to hire a new one. With no adults left in the house, she began to tie her apron. Early in the morning, she pasted eggs and baked bread for me. We went to school together. After school, she no longer met her friends to go for a walk, but learned how to go to the market and buy food. In the evening, she cooks all the dishes I like to eat. We sat facing each other by the window. She raised her glass of juice, gently touching my glass. Seeing my red eyes, she smiled gently. With you here, what are you afraid of? Until many years later, on that fateful night, my parents drove to find me on a snowy night because of a text message. Due to icy road surfaces and poor visibility, accidents occurred. Until now, the scene of my parents passing away makes it difficult for me to remember. I just remember that day. I suddenly had the idea to find a family photo on my desk in the office. I saw a love letter from Lam Mok Du again and accidentally discovered her love. That night, Lam Mok Du spoke frankly to me. She has a boyfriend, whom she has been in love with for many years, but her parents are against them being together. So, she planned to send that son abroad to settle down, never to come back again. Lam Mok Du is 23 years old. Falling in love is a very normal thing, but I still advise her to settle abroad. It's not very suitable. Don't act impulsively. Lam Mok Du was always calm and collected, but that night his emotions were also very agitated. She knocked over the teacup and angrily questioned me. Why not? I'm not with the person I love. Should I spend my whole life by your side taking care of you? Lam Van Gie, do you have no arms or legs? Without me, can't you live? All the blood in my body rushed to my head. I looked at her with utter disbelief. I really couldn't believe she said such things. I lost control and slapped her. We had a big argument. In the end, the books on the shelves, cups and pins were scattered all over the floor. Until I gradually calmed down, I coldly said, "You should go see a psychiatrist. I will tell your parents so they can take you to the doctor." Lam Mok Du glared at me. His eyes were bloodshot and said nothing more. I left the office, only to discover that I left my phone at the company. I went to the company to get my phone. When I had the phone in my hand, I received a call informing me that my parents had passed away. In my phone, half an hour ago, a text message appeared from my mother. Lam Mok Du probably won't forget that night when I left the office and told her I was going to find my parents. So until now, she never really believed that the text message was not sent by me. So for the past 5 years, she pretended to be paralyzed, pretended to be depressed, bankrupt, just happy to see me like a clown, being played around. Now, struggling in the mud. When I pulled my thoughts back to reality, Bok Nin drove to her place and set up a bedroom for me. I couldn't help but ask her, before returning home, "Have you met Lam Mok Du's boyfriend over there?" In the past 5 years, I have never heard Lam Mok Du mention that boy. Perhaps because his parents passed away, Lam Mok Du broke up with him in the past. Because of that son, she is willing to settle abroad forever. It must be deep love. Bok Nin gave me a glass of ginger tea she had just brewed. Hearing that, regardless of her boyfriend, it seemed her memory had become poor. I explained to her about the boy Lam Mok Du loved 5 years ago, and we loved each other for many years. Don't you know? Bok Nin's expression became more and more strange. Finally, after a while, she gently said, "Lam Van Gie, you're tired, rest early." I felt like the more I looked at her face, the more strange it became. Late at night, I lay in bed. The surroundings were dark and silent. Thinking of Bok Nin's words that he would depart this weekend, I opened my phone to book a plane ticket. WeChat rang. Lam Mok Du sent a message again. "Lam Van Gie, go home." That day, I stared at that message. A strange sentence suddenly appeared in his mind. Also Lam Mok Du's voice. "Lam Van Gie, I'll take you home." Lam Mok Du, 15 years old, held my hand at the kindergarten gate and said so. It's crazy. It's clear that from birth I was the child of the Lam family. Bok Nin is right. Maybe I'm really tired, so I should go rest. On the other side, Lam Mok Du called again. Probably just couldn't stand the fact that I suddenly didn't listen. I put the phone on silent mode, then threw it on the nightstand and closed my eyes. I quickly fell asleep. Chaotic dream. In it, I returned to the office I worked in many years ago. The love letter on the table was filled with Lam Mok Du's love for another son, and his determination to take him abroad to settle down. Suddenly, those words were blown away by the wind, turning into a short but beautiful line of a girl hoping that 26-year-old Lam Mok Du would marry Lam Van Gie. I woke up startled. Outside the window, the night was as cold as water, and my whole body was drenched in cold sweat. The dream was so wild that I couldn't recover and lost all sleepiness. I sat on the bed, trying to endure until morning. On the phone, Lam Mok Du sent the last message. "Lam Van Gie, you will regret it." I was completely lost, but quickly understood what she meant. When I finished packing up and went downstairs, I heard Bok Nin calling on the phone with a serious expression. "I've been officially working for more than a month now. You guys firing me without cause is breaking the law? This is impossible." Currently, she does not have a younger brother. I was kicked out the door and stood in the cold wind for over an hour. Lam Mok Du's message was like giving a favor. When I got into the elevator, the sound of the wind still seemed to resonate in my ears, so loud that my head hurt like it was about to split. In the office, Lam Mok Du bowed his head and slowly signed documents. She didn't want to look at me, nor was it convenient for me to urge her. In a daze, my vision was a bit blurry. I stared intently at her continuous signing until I didn't know how much time had passed. Her voice suddenly rang out. "How long are you planning to watch?" I was startled awake, only to realize that at some point she had stopped signing and looked coldly at me. I still know myself. Knowing that she hates me right now, I didn't beat around the bush and directly stated the purpose of coming here. Bok Nin is innocent. You are an outsider. Can you not make things difficult for her? Lam Mok Dew suddenly threw the pen he was holding onto the table. The sudden sound of metal colliding with the tabletop hit people's hearts. She laughed coldly, her eyes looking at me like an invisible hunter. Bok Nin is innocent? In the past, when his parents had just passed away, many orders from a neighboring company almost fell into the hands of Bok Lam Van Gie's family. How long will you continue to pretend to be stupid? I instinctively explained. It's Bok Fu who wants to let the water go wild. Bok Nin severed the father-daughter relationship with the Bok family a long time ago. It's not her fault. Lam Mok Dew smiled faintly. Do you think I will believe these nonsense? She is innocent, and you? What about you sending a text message to your parents on a snowstorm night? Innocent. I bit my lip, almost emotionally collapsing, almost screaming. How many more times do I have to say it? That message wasn't sent by me. When I spoke, tears fell from my eyes, sliding to the corners of my mouth, tasting salty. I frantically raised my hand and wiped it hastily. In my vision, I seemed to see Lam Mok Dew's mocking expression suddenly change when I looked towards her. She turned her head away awkwardly, looking out the window. I could only see half of her profile face, unable to distinguish her current emotions. I gradually calmed down, and finally just gently sighed. It's up to you. I turned around and walked out of the office. Behind him was Lam Mok Dew's almost disappointed voice. I really wish that when my parents said they wanted to send you away, I wouldn't have stopped you. I suddenly stopped walking. Invisible pain seemed to spread throughout all limbs. Many years ago, on the night when I was most helpless, the only one steadfastly standing in front of me protected me. But today, I finally started to regret not giving up on me sooner. But it's okay. I'm about to leave. It's okay. She will soon get her wish. I didn't turn back anymore, I said softly. It was as if I had been sent away. Let's not see each other again in the future. Behind me, there was the sound of something breaking on the floor. I don't stop. I leave this place. When getting out of the elevator, a heavy rain suddenly came outside. I also didn't intend to torture my body. Even though the receptionist didn't have a good attitude towards me, I still lingered in the lobby, intending to wait for the rain to subside before leaving. Not long after I got off, Lam Mok Dew also stepped out of the elevator. I wasn't so selfish that I thought she was following me down, so I turned around and went to work as if I didn't see her. She held the phone to her ear, calling. I don't know if he really didn't notice my presence or not. She came over and sat down on the sofa next to me. The call lasted a long time. She still didn't leave. I felt a bit like sitting on a fire, looking out at the rain. Several times it started to rain harder and harder. Finally she hung up, but still didn't leave. Actually, this hour should be the busiest time for the company. I really felt a bit strange. I couldn't help but glance over. But as soon as I met her eyes, she was looking at me. She didn't avoid it either, still looking straight at me with an expressionless expression. I smelled a strong smell of alcohol on her. Thinking back to just now in the office, I saw that there was only half a bottle of whiskey left on her desk. Thinking that I wouldn't be in the country for many more days, I still couldn't help but remind. You should drink less wine. Trusting me is not good. Lam Mok Dew rarely did not refute, still did not have a good look on his face. After drinking wine, just hum for a moment. The rain outside finally seemed to subside, but it wouldn't stop completely for a while. I stood up and went out. Lam Mok Dew suddenly stood up and gave me an umbrella. This is the company's custom-made umbrella. Each umbrella has a small word engraved on the handle. That was Lam Mok Dew's request. In the past, we were also close brothers. I took the umbrella, mumbled a thank you, and quickly walked into the rain. Behind me, Lam Mok Dew seemed to be saying something, but I couldn't hear the sound of the rain hitting the umbrella anymore. I returned to Bok Nin's residence, intending to apologize for causing her to lose her job. As soon as I entered the door, I heard Bok Nin say helplessly that the boss said he had made a mistake, revoked the decision to fire, and fired the employee who slandered her and said she revealed company secrets. After she finished speaking, her expression looked a little suspicious. Is it really a mistake? On the phone, I seemed to hear Lam Mok Dew's voice. Did she give you any trouble? I was stunned, and in the end I still didn't say anything about looking for Lam Mok Dew. Just shook his head, no. In the remaining days, I started to get busy preparing to go abroad. In previous part-time jobs, any salary I could get was taken. I took the allowance from the foreign school, returned the money I borrowed from Bok Nin, and bought some more things to bring with me when I went abroad. All the luggage has been arranged, and the trivial matters are gradually being handled smoothly. The day I went abroad was my birthday. I invited a few colleagues I worked with and had good relationships with to have lunch together. They broke up with me. Their eyes were red. When I left the restaurant, I saw red lanterns hanging outside the Trade Center Square, near Tet. The New Year atmosphere gradually spreads everywhere. I suddenly remembered that many years ago, countless New Year's Eves, Lam Mok Dew and I sat across from each other, shared a drink, and wished each other a happy new year. At that time, I regretted not having my parents by my side. And she comforted me, saying from now on, every year on New Year's Eve and New Year, I will be with you. This year there will be no more. The wind suddenly blew and hurt my eyes. I raised my hand to rub my eyes, and suddenly saw Lam Mok Dew standing not far away. I thought I was dizzy until she actually walked closer. We started to become strangers to this point. Even standing a little close to each other made me feel awkward and uncomfortable. After a long while, she finally spoke first. Wind. She raised her voice. Her voice was actually so soft that I almost couldn't hear her clearly. She said, "Happy birthday to me." Suddenly red eyes. Lam Mok Dew looked uncomfortable and continued. "I just heard that a customer gave me a marvel-shaped cake. You might like it. Go home and get it for you. Perhaps when people are separated, they are always more emotional." I suddenly couldn't hold back, almost burst into tears. I'm about to leave. No matter how many grudges I have, I should probably say goodbye. I got in the car and went with Lam Mok Dew to my old house. Sitting in the car, I secretly took out my phone to check the flight time. Actually, I don't have much time left, but I think if I can't make it later, I'll change to a later flight. Arriving at the old house, Lam Mok Dew took the cake out of the box. At the same time he took it out, a blue greeting card fell to the ground. I bent down to pick it up. The first thing that catches the eye is the words, "Dear Mr. Jong, try it." Like a sudden strong punch hit me. I suddenly thought, why did I think that even now Lam Mok Dew would still be with me on my birthday? But I pretended not to see Lam Mok Dew's words, intentionally mocking him. I picked up the card and put it aside. Lam Mok Dew took a candle and put it on the cake. Under the bright light, I saw her eyes looking at me with a smile. Just like Lam Mok Dew many years ago would smile gently at me. But I know, Lam Mok Dew no longer smiles at me anymore. Like right now, in the smile in her eyes, I only see fakeness and irony. Before she could put the candles on the cake, her phone rang. She picked up the phone, and I heard Jong Triet's voice on the other end. Don't know what happened. I sat down at the dining table, waiting quietly until Lam Mok Dew whispered something over there. Jong Triet asked a little excitedly, "Sister Mok Dew, are you really not coming?" Lam Mok Dew bowed her head slightly. The light cast a shadow on her face. She was silent for a long moment, then glanced at me. The card with the name, "A Triet," is still placed next to me. Actually, she didn't need to pretend to be so hesitant. I said, "Then go ahead." Lam Mok Dew seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and told me again, "Wait for her to come back, and then make your wish." I nodded. She quickly turned around and left. I sat for a while, then stood up and walked quickly to the door. Lam Mok Dew quickly walked down the steps and walked towards the car parked in the front yard. I looked at her back. In the past, when my parents were still alive, every time Lam Mok Dew had to go, if I sent her off, she would definitely turn around, as if she had eyes behind her, able to see me. But this time, she neatly opened the car door, got in the car and drove away. "Don't turn around, don't stop." In the air, the comments began to flow again, frantically. "You're too narcissistic, you spare part. Now you're desperate. Take the cake, that's worth it. Maybe it belongs to my brother, try it. Now let's eat well alone. After eating, quickly go away." Finally about to leave, I closed my eyes. Those comments eventually disappeared. Returning to the house, I looked at that cake for a long time. In the end, there was still a note left behind the card. "I'm gone. Maybe I won't come back in the future." I didn't touch the cake. Maybe just leave it as is. This would be goodbye. The phone rang. Boknin called. "Calculate time and time, and avoid having to change tickets." I called a taxi to the airport. Snow accumulates on the streets of Haiti. New Year's lanterns gradually hung up along the roadside, along with Lam Mok Dew's face gradually disappearing. While waiting at the airport, Boknin and I had some late-night food. The phone is placed on the dining table. I ate and felt a bit lost until Boknin asked if I was waiting for the phone call. It's convenient to get a SIM card when you get there. If there are any calls you haven't called yet, remember to call early. I regained my composure, shook my head. No. Bok Nin seemed suspicious. But you've looked at your phone many times. I felt a bit embarrassed and quickly put my phone in my pocket. Bok Nin was about to say something, then stopped, and finally spoke up. About going abroad, please tell Lam Mok Dew. I remembered the words I wrote on the back of the card, nodded. Yeah, I told you. Bok Nin instinctively continued asking. So did she say? Halfway through, she fell silent again. After a while, she sighed softly. I said softly, it's okay, she won't care. Like Lam Mok Dew said, she really wishes that when my parents wanted to send me away, she hadn't stopped me. So now I'm about to leave, she just applauded. Bok Nin silently looked at me. She revealed that strange look in her eyes. Maybe he feels sorry for me. After the security check, when I took out my phone, Lam Mok Dew called. The security officer looked at me with questioning eyes. I was stunned for a moment, finally pressed the listen button and went aside, not continuing through security check. On the other hand, Lam Mok Dew's voice after many years is rarely not bad. There's even a hint of apology. I understand her so well, I don't need to listen anymore to know what she wants to say. The airport was a bit noisy, her voice also opened up a bit. Jiang Triad here is a bit confused. You should stay at your old house. Tomorrow, I will buy another cake to make up for your birthday. She clearly knows that a birthday is a birthday every other day and not anymore. In the past, my parents didn't want to return home and said the same thing. At that time, Lam Mok Dew would have coldly laughed and said that she was pretending, but now she used those words herself. I'm about to leave, I don't want to make things difficult for her. In the end, I just said, it's okay. Luckily, I knew she wouldn't come back, so I didn't wait there. Hanging up the phone, I didn't hesitate anymore. Turned it off, went through security check, and then boarded the plane. The plane took off, climbed to a height of 10,000 meters, and gradually disappeared into the clouds. So, sister, it's just like this. When the call ended, for some reason, Lam Mok Dew's heart suddenly stopped beating for a moment. She suddenly felt uneasy, as if something that had always been within reach had suddenly been withdrawn. Jiang Triad lay on the hospital bed, his face pale, and called her several times in a weak voice, Sister Mok Dew. She didn't hear, her eyes remained motionless, staring at the phone screen that was gradually turning off, until Jiang Triad reached out and patted her arm, speaking with concern. Recently, I remembered that piece of paper, Ms. Mok Dew. If you still keep that piece of paper, are you really not going to tell Lam Vangi again? Or should I help you say it? Lam Mok Dew suddenly woke up and instinctively said, no need. Jiang Triad looked at her strangely, his expression full of confusion. Why? Lam Vangi just received help from the Lam family. He considers you his biological sister. It's just because of memory problems. Lam Mok Dew of course knows that Lam Vangi is not his younger brother. He is just an orphan who was helped by the Lam family. Otherwise, she could not have developed unusual feelings for Lam Vangi. But there are words that still cannot be said, and do not dare to say them. She doesn't dare forget Lam Vangi's words 15 years ago when he slapped her in the face. If there is a next time, Lam Mok Dew, we will never meet again. The train of thought was interrupted. Lam Mok Dew gently repeated that sentence. No need. Jiang Triad groaned, held his head, and began to breathe rapidly. Recently my headaches have gotten worse and worse. The doctor said the migraines are getting worse. As he spoke, he climbed up from the bed, crying and crashing into Lam Mok Dew's arms. Sister Mok Dew, I won't die, right? The scent of men's perfume is not too strong, but makes Lam Mok Dew unable to ignore it. Poking her nose, Lam Mok Dew smelled really unpleasant. She tried to suppress the feeling of wanting to push him away. Mouth comforted, it's okay. But the thought had long since flown away. Obviously lying on a hospital bed, talking about such pain, but still not forgetting to apply perfume. Lam Mok Dew began to wonder if Jiang Triad's illness really flared up that often. Were the times he repeatedly called her to leave Lam Vangi really unintentional? The times he repeatedly mentioned that piece of paper, saying he wanted to tell Lam Vangi, was it really not intentionally dangerous? Thinking of Lam Vangi, Lam Mok Dew couldn't help but remember his last words. It's okay. An unreasonable feeling of insecurity came over me. What exactly is she insecure about? Why do I feel like Lam Van Gie's too calm words contain something she cannot accept? Is he really still obediently staying in his old house? Finally, he coaxed Zhang Triet and found an excuse to leave. Lam Mok Du did not hesitate any longer, driving as if flying back to his old home in the middle of the night. Pushed the door in, but there was no sign of Lam Van Gie anywhere. Her heart suddenly sank to the bottom of the abyss. It was warm in the house, but Lam Mok Du felt cold. The blue Marvel character-shaped cake was still intact, placed on the dining table. Lam Mok Du consoled himself. Perhaps Lam Van Gie just went upstairs to rest, or perhaps he just couldn't wait, so he left. Tonight, she said she would make up for his birthday tomorrow, and he didn't refuse. So anyway, will he come tomorrow? Next to the cake, it seemed like there was also a card placed. What is it? Lam Mok Du was not impressed. She walked to the dining table and pointed at the road that suddenly became very difficult. Lam Mok Du gradually saw clearly the words on the card, which were Lam Van Gie's most familiar handwriting. I'm gone. I probably won't come back in the future. I won't touch the cake. Please return it to Zhang Triet. What does it mean? What does it mean? It was as if a bucket of cold water suddenly poured down on Lam Mok Du's head without warning. What does return the cake to Zhang Triet? Zhang Triet, what if you won't come back again in the future? Lam Mok Du's body staggered. He almost fell over. Extreme panic mixed with anger made Lam Mok Du snatch the card, and then saw a few words on the front of the card. Dear Mr. Zhang Triet, in front of the cake she specially ordered for Lam Van Gie. Is that bakery crazy? When Lam Van Gie saw this card, but didn't say anything to her, what was he thinking? Thinking that she intentionally called him over to use a cake that didn't belong to him to insult him and not make fun of him? But no, it's not like that. In an instant, fear and insecurity came, mixed with emotions that were almost violent anger, causing Lam Mok Du's hand to tremble nonstop as he called the bakery, until the shop owner's very helpless voice came from the other side. Miss Lam, it's Mr. Zhang. Mr. Zhang Triet came this afternoon. He said this cake was ordered by you for him, but added his name. We saw that the last few times you ordered cakes, they were all for him, so we won't ask you again. Lam Mok Du's temples twitched slightly in his head, buzzing for a while. Over the past 5 years, countless times she wanted to find Lam Van Gie or be with Lam Van Gie. Zhang Triet always had an innocent look on his face and called her on the phone. Zhang Triet at this moment made Lam Mok Du completely unable to bear it anymore. Lam Mok Du's face turned black, and he called Zhang Triet. The peaceful appearance that had been going on for 5 years completely disappeared at this moment. She almost screamed and questioned Zhang Triet. Is it fun? Is it meaningful? On the other side, Zhang Triet's cry rang out again. I just happened to go there. I thought you gave it to me. Lam Mok Du coldly laughed continuously, her hatred gradually destroying her reason. In the morning I told him to go away. In the evening, I wanted to be with Lam Van Gie. On Zhang Triet's birthday, his hypocrisy was disgusting. The other side was silent for a long time, and finally sobbed in disbelief. Sorry, I'll go apologize. Lam Van Gie will also help me tell him what's on that paper. There was only anger left in Lam Mok Du's eyes. She finally lost some of her reason. Finally, then let's go? Zhang Triet doesn't need to threaten me anymore. I want to marry Lam Van Gie, just go and tell him. If Zhang Triet will definitely bother you nonstop, if she and Lam Van Gie will also definitely become more and more distant, then go ahead and tell Lam Van Gie. Saying that she still hasn't given up, she still wants to marry him. Just let Lam Van Gie hate her. Hate her completely. It's better than now every time they face each other. Countless times they are silent like strangers. On the other side of the phone was Zhang Triet's panicked and shocked voice. Lam Mok Du you. Lam Mok Du pulled the corner of his mouth, word by word. Go, just go. Tell him. If you can still contact Lam Van Gie. The other side finally fell silent. Call time is still jumping. Lam Mok Du held the phone and staggered upstairs. She searched all the bedrooms, then the terrace and the office. She wanted to find Lam Van Gie, but couldn't find her anymore. She took out her phone and texted, "Where have you been?" but no response. Lam Mok Du searched everywhere and then entered the office. The window was not closed. The night wind blew in without a sound, blowing the paper off the desk. The handwriting that 18-year-old Lam Mok Du left on it has now begun to turn yellow. Lam Mok Du suddenly remembered the first time she met Lam Van Gie. That year when Lam Mok Ju was 14 years old, her parents took her to the orphanage to visit. Just one day of visiting, but followed by countless camera lenses. The parents next door opened 2 live broadcasts, just because the family company went public and ended up only donating 5,000 VND to the orphanage. Lam Mok Ju found it funny. Just as the visit was about to end, the parents next door wanted to act in front of the camera. Casually called a boy passing by, saying he wanted to sponsor him to go to school. In front of the media, that said, they are completely uninterested. Lam Mok Ju found it funny, and didn't know what psychology motivated her to directly step forward and ask the boy, "What's your name?" The boy hesitated, looked at her for a long time, then said 2 words, "Van Gi." Lam Mok Ju, in the panicked warning eyes of his parents, reached out and grabbed the boy's wrist. "My parents want to sponsor you. You are an orphan. In the future, please follow the Lam family. Lam Van Gi, I will take you home." Lam Van Gi was 12 years old, so he followed her to the Lam family's house. He was so stupid. He really thought Lam Ton Tam's parents were sponsoring him, thinking Lam Mok Ju brought him home out of kindness. So he always stammered thanks 1,000 times to Lam's parents, even though they seemed upset. Later, when the Lam family's parents were away on business, a partner of the Lam family, a fat man, broke into the Lam family's house in the middle of the night and then into Lam Mok Ju's bedroom. When Lam Mok Ju pulled out the knife from under his pillow and was about to rush towards that man, behind the man there was another knife rushing towards him. Thunder boomed outside the window. In the flash of lightning, Lam Mok Ju saw Lam Van Gi frightened, her small face pale. Lam Mok Ju didn't know how to describe the feeling at that moment. It was like a fierce punch straight to her heart. Lam Mok Ju was 14 years old and experienced the feeling of being protected for the first time. It's a bit funny. This feeling comes from a 12-year-old child. In the dim darkness, Lam Mok Ju could still see Lam Van Gi's body trembling violently, but the air frame in his hand was still trying its best to impact the man, until the man in extreme pain became furious, turned around, and one hand squeezed Lam Van Gi's neck, that fragile neck. It seems that it only takes a little force to break it. Lam Mok Ju's whole body stiffened. The fruit knife rushed up. That night, someone died in the bedroom. Lam Van Gi was still so naive. Even in severe pain, he still contacted the Lam family's parents, but did not know that while he was in the emergency room, the Lam family's parents had already rushed back. Each person slapped Lam Mok Ju hard. The Lam family's father's voice became harsh and angry. "Do you know that Mr. True passed away? How big of an order did I lose?" Not only Lam Van Gi was not loved by his parents, so later, when Lam Van Gi was 20 years old, Lam Mok Ju intentionally let him into the office. Saw the paper she wrote when she was 18 years old. She thought he and she were people in the same situation, people who had relied on each other for many years. The two of them should, of course, be together forever. But her response was a slap full of disgust and anger from Lam Van Gi, a questioning. "Almost crazy," he said to Lam Mok Ju. "Are you crazy? Your parents can't want to see you do such a thing." Lam Mok Ju's face was slapped to one side. She burst out laughing bitterly. "They don't want to see? Then just disappear. Once you disappear, you won't see them again. It's her story, her choice. Why should we care whether those two want it or not?" Lam Van Gi doesn't know what to do with her anymore. He knocked over the cup of tea and carried it on the shelf, the pen stand on the table. In the end, he threw them all to the ground, leaving a mess on the floor. Lam Mok Ju calmly looked at him. When he finally stopped, she spoke up with determination. "Why should we care about them? We can go abroad and settle down, never to come back again. Lam Van Gi, I can make money now. I can support you. No need to rely on their hateful sponsorship anymore." Lam Van Gi threw all his belongings and finally gradually calmed down. He coldly said, "You should go see a psychiatrist. I will tell your parents so they can take you to the doctor. If you hear or see words like that again, we will never meet again." Lam Mok Ju only heard the last sentence he said. "From now on, we won't see each other again." She suddenly felt scared, hurriedly chased after her, her voice trembling. "Lam Van Gi, let's continue talking." But the person who walked out of the office left the house without looking back. That night, with heavy snowfall, the Lam family's parents received a text message from Lam Van Gi, meeting them at the cafe, saying that Mr. Tran was also there. Mr. Tran is a business leader that the Lam family's parents really want to cooperate with, so they risked their lives driving in heavy snow to get there. Because of poor visibility, the car's brakes slipped in the snow, and they encountered a tragic accident. Later, at the funeral, Lam Van Gie cried and explained to Lam Mok Dew that the message was not sent by him. That night, he left his phone at the company. When I got my phone back, the accident had already happened. Lam Mok Dew said she believed him without thinking. She believed everything he said. What's more, she doesn't care about the departure of those two people. As for the couple who once sent her to their business partner's room, she soon wished they should no longer exist in this world. But after the funeral ended, late one night, Lam Mok Dew worriedly went to pick up Lam Van Gie. By chance, she heard the conversation between him and Bok Nin. Lam Van Gie's voice was calm and relaxed. In short, you can marry anyone, except Lam Mok Dew. Bok Nin smiled lightly. Are you disgusted by her? Lam Van Gie was silent for a moment, seemingly tacitly agreeing. After a while, he spoke up. Anyone is fine, but I don't want her to step in. Lam Mok Dew suddenly stopped in place. In her head, she kept repeating 3 words, disgusting her. What are they talking about? Lam Mok Dew understands better than anyone. In the past, her parents personally sent her to that middle-aged man's room. That story, Lam Mok Dew only told Lam Van Gie in his whole life. Before, she always thought he was the only one in this world who wasn't disgusting. She was the only one who felt sorry for her, but as it turned out, he also felt disgusted. He brought that story up as a story to tell Bok Nin. That night, Lam Mok Dew ran out, squatted on the side of the road, and vomited. After many years, she once again experienced the feeling of being hated and thrown away by everyone. That night, she returned to her old house and dug out all the things related to Lam Van Gie that she had carefully preserved all these years. Except for that piece of paper, everything was dragged into the living room and burned directly in a large cardboard box. The fire flared up, dyeing her eyes red. In her red vision, she saw Lam Van Gie rushing in strangely. Even though she hated him that much, when she saw him in that moment, what she thought of was the paper still left in the office, and the words Lam Van Gie had just said not long before. If you ever hear or see words like that again, we will never meet again. Obviously filled with hatred, but in that moment it suddenly turned into panic. Lam Mok Dew quickly stood up, ran into the office during the burning fire, stuffed that piece of paper in his lap, and pulled Lam Van Gie out of the rising fire. That night, John Triot picked up a piece of paper that Lam Mok Dew accidentally dropped. That same night, Lam Van Gie fell into a coma in the hospital. When he woke up, his memories suddenly became confused, thinking he was his biological son, the heir to the Lam family. Lam Mok Dew hates him, hates himself. The first person she trusted completely ended up betraying her trust. So she intentionally took revenge on him. She said the fire damaged her legs. He believed her. She said the company went bankrupt. He also believed it. She said she was depressed. He still believed it. He worked 5 jobs a day, carefully saving every penny, all of which he gave to her to splurge on. Lam Mok Dew tasted the sweetness of revenge, but she did not feel happy. She hates Lam Van Gie, but she doesn't dare to say the real reason she hates him. Just dared to lie and say that she believed he sent the message to harm her parents. But actually, who sent that message? How did those 2 people end up leaving? Why should she care? She hated Lam Van Gie, but discovered she still loved him. Lam Mok Dew is immersed in endless painful memories. She couldn't find Lam Van Gie anymore, nor could she call his phone number. The office was cold and silent. She sat by the window, wide open, falling into a trance. Where did Lam Van Gie go? Lam Mok Dew experienced a long period of confusion and confusion. She revealed herself in the house, after refusing countless calls from her secretary and assistant. The company gradually fell into chaos. The assistant came to the house and sadly advised, "General Manager Lam, please go back to the company and examine the situation. Those old men are taking advantage of the turbid water. The company is about to turn upside down, the career that you have worked hard to build for many years. Do you really want to see them destroyed?" That company was built by Lam Mok Dew himself since he was a university student. She inherits nothing. After those 2 people died, she sold all their assets, not keeping a penny, and donated everything. There is no other reason. simply feeling that the money they earn is hateful. Lam Mok Du looked at his assistant for a long time, then spoke absent-mindedly. It's bankrupt. What other company is there? She remembers 5 years ago, she told Lam Van Gie that she was bankrupt. The assistant couldn't convince her. The next day, the secretary brought the psychiatrist to find her again. Lam Mok Du said to the secretary, "If you come again, just pack up your things and leave." After that, no one came to look for her anymore. The large house seemed to turn into a giant tomb, stuffy and deadly. Lam Mok Du sat on the sofa and opened a bottle of wine by the window. Her vision flashed. She saw Lam Van Gie sitting opposite, raising his glass, smiling and saying to her, "Lam Mok Du, Happy New Year." She quickly raised her glass and touched it to him, but the person opposite immediately disappeared. "Take your hand back and bring the glass of wine to your lips. Strong alcohol causes pain in the chest." That day, the last time Lam Van Gie came to her company, he said, "You should drink a little wine. Your heart is not good. Why don't you come and advise her now?" Phone calls to Lam Van Gie always go unanswered. When Lam Mok Du drank until she was drunk, the voice on the other end reminded her that Lam Van Gie's phone number had become empty. Tonight is New Year's Eve, the moment fireworks bloom outside the window in the distance. Lam Mok Du covered his face with his hands and finally couldn't hold back any longer and burst into tears. She knows it. In fact, she knows it. Lam Van Gie really goes when she says go. He, once gone, won't come back again. Tet has passed, and the New Year atmosphere gradually disappears. The snow melts and tree branches begin to sprout. After more than a month, Lam Mok Du finally walked out of the house. Previously, even though she did not dare to say love, relying on her hatred was enough for her to continue living. And now, she doesn't know what she's alive for anymore. As Lam Van Gie said, "Disgusting, no one is disgusted by her." Even she herself was disgusted with herself. Perhaps many, many years ago, on that dark night, Lam Mok Du should no longer have been there. That's why we can't meet Lam Van Gie. Not long after, she naively imagined that she too received salvation and care, giving up her foolish, purposeless intentions. Lam Mok Du was lost, standing blankly on the street. Then a familiar figure suddenly appeared in her sight. That was Bok Nin, the person who disappeared with Lam Van Gie more than a month ago. Lam Mok Du's eyes suddenly turned red. He almost rushed to grab Bok Nin's collar. "Where's Lam Van Gie?" Bok Nin was stunned, then recovered. His face turned black, and he pushed Lam Mok Du away. Lam Mok Du drank too much alcohol. Her whole body was filled with a strong smell of alcohol. She was pushed away. She staggered back a few steps. Bok Nin looked at her coldly. "Didn't you hope he would go away soon? Why isn't it exactly what you wanted now? Even if you hate him and want to take revenge on him, those 5 years are enough for you to take revenge, right?" Lam Mok Du stood in place for a moment, speechless. Bok Nin smiled coldly. "But I'm also quite curious. 5 years ago, why did you suddenly start hating him so much? Don't tell me it was because of that message. Others believed it, but not me." Bok Nin knows best. Lam Mok Du has always hated her parents. Lam Mok Du's face was blank, staring blankly into space. For a while, she almost muttered, "Let me tell you about my pain. It's disgusting. I'm dirty. I can marry anyone. But not me. A hateful fake person like him. Isn't that hateful?" Bok Nin listened, but was completely confused. "What pain? What's disgusting? What are you dirty?" "Lam Mok Du, how much have you drank?" Bok Nin's suspicious eyes and puzzled expression fell into Lam Mok Du's eyes. Lam Mok Du suddenly felt a sense of insecurity and a feeling of losing weight for no reason. But that night, she clearly saw it with her own eyes and heard it with her own hands. Maybe it's because of the alcohol. When she spoke, her voice was hoarse. "Stop pretending. 5 years ago, on the night of True Titch, I heard everyone talking in the hallway outside my room." Bok Nin's expression became even more suspicious. But it was indeed too long ago. She carefully recalled and thought about it before finally remembering. Turns out, just because of such a small thing, it turns out it was just because of a few words that Lam Mok Du misunderstood. It turns out that Lam Van Gie's suffering and struggles over the past 5 years were just because of such a small misunderstanding. Bok Nin felt his chest choked. After a while, he said, "If you could listen a few more sentences at that time, you would discover that things are completely different from what you thought. Lam Mok Du stood in place. She couldn't move anymore. She listened as Bok Nin calmly recounted the words Lam Van Gi continued to say after she left. I'm the one who fell into the mud from birth. So sister, you don't need to joke with me like that. You know very well that the person who deserves to be hated is me. Since I was a child, I have never received love. The first time I received it was because Lam Mok Du gave it to me, but I don't deserve her. I know myself. If I really have to get married, then it's fine with anyone, but it's fine with anyone. I don't want her. I hope she can marry the best man in the world, not someone like me. Before Lam Van Gi was 8 years old, he was not loved since he was still in his mother's womb. His father was seriously abusive. His younger brother followed his parents' violent tendencies, pampered his younger brother, tolerated his younger brother, and hurt Lam Van Gi. When he was 8 years old, his father died on the way to debt collection, and his mother abandoned him. Lam Van Gi took his younger brother and escaped. Lam Van Gi entered the orphanage, still being bullied and isolated by the children. Until the age of 12, Lam Mok Du seemed to fall from the sky. Lam Mok Du stood there, lost, shaking his head repeatedly. No way, no way. Bok Nin smiled softly. Lam Mok Du, do you understand what it means to have low self-esteem? That feeling of fear from the bottom of your bones, when faced with good things, instinctively being timid and avoiding. It's not that you don't want it, but you're certain that you will never have it. Like the slap Lam Van Gi gave you. That night it wasn't because of anger and blame, but because of panic and confusion, you chose to escape. What's more, compared to the slap that Lam Van Gi gave you, that night it wasn't because of anger and blame, but because of panic and confusion that you chose to hide. Love. He is also afraid of losing something close to the love that he has found with great difficulty and is trying to preserve. Lam Mok Du, why do you think that someone like Lam Van Gi, who almost considers her a god, could be disgusted with her? But about that story, Lam Van Gi has never told anyone. In fact, that night, in disbelief, Lam Mok Du intended to continue listening. But the anger and loss of emotional control were so great that she left, missing the words that followed. Maybe after she calms down, she will also go ask Lam Van Gi to know the truth. But at that moment, Lam Van Gi had a high fever, his memory was confused, and he thought he was the heir's younger brother. Perhaps he no longer remembers the words he said to Bok Nin. But there is still one girl who can go find Lam Van Gi and explain. She thought she had many things to say to him. With a feeling of regret and pain, Lam Mok Du returned home, hastily packed some luggage, and planned to drive to find Lam Van Gi. Bok Nin didn't tell her where Lam Van Gi went, but she thought that whether at home or abroad, wherever in the world, she would definitely find him. Sooner or later, she will find him. When she was about to drive away, Zhang Triet came in the middle of heavy rain. Lam Mok Du did not want to pay attention to him. This time, she will not hide her feelings for Lam Van Gi anymore. And Zhang Triet will no longer have any cards in his hand. Zhang Triet rushed forward, intending to stop her. Lam Mok Du directly pushed him away. He immediately fell into the rain in a dramatic manner, like countless times before. Looking at Lam Mok Du with pitiful eyes, he thought he was a good actor, but in reality Lam Mok Du was just lazy and didn't want to expose him. Lam Mok Du directly got in the car and closed the car door. She heard Zhang Triet's unwilling and resentful voice. Wake up. You and Lam Van Gi can never be together. Crazy. Why not? Lam Mok Du shouted back. Zhang Triet's somewhat crazy voice continued to echo in her ears. The ending has been arranged. You and I will definitely be together. And Lam Van Gi is just a sidekick, will definitely disappear. Lam Mok Du nervously thought, what nonsense is he talking about? She slammed the car door shut and drove away. But her head began to hurt uncontrollably, as if some invisible force wanted to pull her back to Zhang Triet's side again. Then again, like last year's night, when she wanted to listen to the entire conversation between Lam Van Gi and Bok Nin, it seemed that same force made her leave, even though she actually wanted to stay. The pain in his head became more and more intense. Zhang Triet's words continuously rang in his ears. The ending has been arranged. You and I will definitely be together. And Lam Van Gi is just a pawn and will definitely disappear. Wake up, wake up. Vision gradually became blurry, Cold sweat began to fall from his forehead. Lam mocked you gradually. Know what you are doing, where you are going, until the car moves more and more, gradually entering a winding, bumpy mountain road. The road gradually leads to the deserted mountain peak at night. At the end of that empty road, Lam mocked you saw a familiar back, seemingly the back of 12-year-old Lam Van Gie. That year, Lam mocked you was 14 years old, held his hand, and said, "Lam Van Gie, I'll take you home." The car chased frantically. In the last moment, Lam mocked you suddenly remembered that Lam Van Gie had grown up. This year, he was 25 years old, no longer looking like a 12-year-old. She had hallucinations, but the car couldn't stop in time, crashed through the railing of the mountain road, and fell straight into the abyss. The glass door was tightly closed, but Lam mocked you seemed to hear the fierce roar of the wind. The sound of the wind rushed into her ears, rushing into her brain. Among the sound of the wind that made her head hurt as if it was about to split, along with the sound of the wind frantically rushing into her brain, were countless things called backstories. Lam mocked you fell into a prolonged coma. In that coma, she saw a novel, a perverse novel about mutual salvation. She and Lam Van Gie are the main characters in it. The story begins when Lam Van Gie was 12 years old. That year Lam mocked you pulled Lam Van Gie out of the mud he was struggling in. Most of the plot at the beginning of the book is something Lam mocked you is all too familiar with, her past with Lam Van Gie. Until the night Lam mocked you's parents passed away, the plot in the book began to appear in many places that were crossed out by hand and changed. In the original plot, Lam mocked you's parents were arranged to meet by a business friend, Mr. Tran, but unfortunately had a car accident on a snowstorm night and passed away. At his parents' funeral, Lam mocked you appeared cold, making Lam Van Gie feel confused. That night, Lam mocked you told Lam Van Gie about his saddest past. Lam Van Gie is heartbroken because of her past, and also understands her hatred towards her parents. But a few days later, Lam mocked you overheard a conversation between Lam Van Gie and Bok Nin. She didn't leave in the middle, but listened to the entire conversation. In excitement, she appeared, completely revealing her feelings to Lam Van Gie. She told Lam Van Gie that in this world, she would not be able to marry anyone else. In her eyes, there is no one better than him. The plot reaches a happy ending, and Zhang Triet, the son next door, an unimportant supporting character, loves without being reciprocated, sadly goes abroad, ending poorly. These stories were crossed out with a black pen. Then a new story was added by hand on the back. Changed to before Lam mocked you's parents passed away, they received a text message from Lam Van Gie, leading to a car accident on a snowstorm night. Lam mocked you lost his parents, so he hated Lam Van Gie to the core and had no more feelings. But the new plot cannot be implemented. Lam mocked you does not hate Lam Van Gie because of that. The next plot was crossed out and revised again. Lam mocked you heard the conversation between Lam Van Gie and Bok Nin, but left midway and misunderstood. Lam Van Gie suddenly had a high fever. Her memory was confused. She thought Lam mocked you was her biological sister. Lam mocked you and Lam Van Gie are increasingly distant, but with Zhang Triet, they are increasingly closer. Lam Van Gie is closer to myth or disappearance. Even the original reader's comments on the book were crossed out and replaced with malicious comments. What an idiot. Right now the female lead is happily skiing with her younger brother next door. This narcissistic male lead should disappear now. After eating, quickly go away. Finally, it's about to go. Lam mocked you flipped through the novel that had been edited by hand. My hands trembled, becoming more and more intense. So, that's what she's longed for day and night for so many years, but couldn't get it. Something that she thought was far away and that she would definitely not be able to possess in this lifetime. It turned out that from the beginning, the story was destined to belong to her. It turns out that her and Lam Van Gie's ending should not have been to become strangers. The night wind blew past, letting the door slide into the room, closing the last page of the book. Lam mocked you was full of anger, but also confused, looking towards the direction the wind was blowing, only to notice that she was in an unfamiliar bedroom. And this book, or rather the stolen book, belongs to the owner of this room. This is not a completely unfamiliar room. She remembered, many years ago she went to the Zhang family's house, and Zhang's father took her to visit this place. green curtains, and sofa. This is Zhang Triet's bedroom. It's him. As expected, he was also the biggest beneficiary after the story was changed. The handwriting she had seen before, besides Zhang Triet, who else could it be? Rage destroyed her reason. Hatred and pain, countless pent-up emotions made her eyes bloodshot. She stood up and staggered out the door. The moment she walked out the door, she woke up from her dream, still lying in the hospital bed. She was very clear it wasn't a dream. The car falling into the abyss did not take her life, but also left injuries on her body. Lam Mok Du did not care about the injury, left the hospital, and went to Zhang Triet's house. Zhang Triet's parents have both gone abroad. Zhang Triet is alone at home. Seeing her coming, his eyes were filled with joy. Sister Mok Du, you finally understand. We are the only ones destined to be together. Lam Mok Du strongly pushed him away and went directly upstairs to that room, just like in his dream. She opened the bedside drawer, entered the password, and opened the first secret compartment on the wall. It's certainly no different. In the secret compartment lies a novel that has been turned over many times. The content is identical with identical traces of handwritten edits. Zhang Triet's face turned pale, and he quickly rushed in to stop him, but it was too late. He sat down on the ground, looking at the book that was in Lam Mok Du's hand. He couldn't barge in for no reason. He couldn't open that button for no reason. He already knew all the backstory. He also knew the plot. He made amends. Zhang Triet sat on the ground, his eyes filled with panic. After a while, the people turned crazy. There's nothing left to lose. Before Lam Mok Du was 15 years old, I was always by her side. Why can Lam Van Gie, but I can't? Lam Van Gie is the male lead. What about me? What if she doesn't know the original plot? The story has been rewritten. No one can change it anymore. Her only choice is to follow the plot by my side. Lam Mok Du closed the book. After a long while, she slowly looked at him. So what if I die? Cold sweat on Zhang Triet's head began to fall, large drops. We are already male and female protagonists who depend on each other. If I die, you won't even want to live. At that time, did you think Lam Van Gie would be grateful to you and remember you? No, he will just completely forget her. And when the male and female protagonists disappear, the plot in the novel will also completely disappear. Lam Mok Du quietly listened and then smiled in understanding. So as long as I take you with me, this world will still exist normally. Lam Van Gie will still live well. He will just forget me, forget the plot in the book. Zhang Triet was in extreme pain. Unbelievable. Look at her. Are you crazy? Lam Mok Du, are you crazy? I said you would disappear, didn't you hear? Lam Mok Du stood up and slowly walked towards Zhang Triet. Maybe she really is crazy. Many years before that night, maybe Lam Mok Du was crazy. Zhang Triet's desperate laughter echoed in the room. Lam Mok Du, you are not innocent. That night when you heard the conversation between Lam Van Gie and Bok Nin, you did not choose to trust him. You did not become the person like in the original plot, the one who always believed that Lam Van Gie would not hurt you. The person who pushed down the first domino, the one who made the plot continue, was you. Ha ha ha, like a knife straight into Lam Mok Du's heart. Sunset gradually falls. The bright yellow sunlight flooded into the room. In the bright light of the late afternoon, Lam Mok Du saw the faint smiling face of Lam Van Gie. He said, Lin Mo Yao, Happy New Year. Lam Mok Du did not forget that today is New Year's Eve. She once promised Lam Van Gie that she would be with him every New Year's Eve and Tet. But she knew from now on she would never be able to again. As soon as Lam Van Gie's smiling face touched it, it shattered like water bubbles. She understood that she had lost him forever. Then the summer of my second year, after I went abroad, my memory returned to normal. Also on that day, I learned that Zhang Triet had passed away. The Zhang family's parents were only interested in their career. After Zhang Triet disappeared for half a year, they wanted to find him to arrange a marriage. Finally, they discovered that their son had disappeared. After negotiating the work, Zhang's mother had free time to stop by her son's residence to take a look. When entering the room, Zhang Triet's body was discovered. Only a white skeleton remained. Forensic determination took more than half a year. When I heard the news, I couldn't help but remember that night. Lam Mok Du tried to get my new phone number and called me again. I suddenly remembered the comments I saw before going abroad last year. If those weren't hallucinations, after my memory became confused, Jiang try it as the male protagonist in the novel would have now disappeared. So what will happen to Lam Mok Due as the female lead? When I decided to go abroad, I told myself I had completely let go, didn't think about turning back, didn't think about contacting Lam Mok Due anymore. But after watching the phone screen light up for a long time, this time I still pressed the answer button. The other side was silent for a long time, no sound. Perhaps he was used to me refusing calls. Lam Mok Due felt a bit unbelievable. After a while, her somewhat urgent and confused voice came. Is that Van Gee? I stayed in a small rented room off campus. It was hot. The old electric fan was squeaking. I responded with a hum, and then fell silent. The silence lasted for a long time. I didn't mean to be cold towards Lam Mok Due. It's just that after so many years, since Lam Mok Due's parents passed away, I really don't know how to comfortably talk to her anymore. Now, having been abroad for nearly a year, I feel even more that between us there is only strangeness, and silence facing each other. In the end, it was still Lam Mok Due who spoke first. I just found out I'm near you. Do you have time to eat together? I was silent. The other party quickly explained. Don't misunderstand. The company happened to be on a business trip. It's a mistake. I held the phone tightly, instinctively still choosing to refuse. I have class this afternoon. I probably won't have time. In fact, Lam Mok Due has never been someone who is unclear before. She couldn't help but understand what I meant. But at this moment, she still said urgently, it doesn't take long. You can choose near your school, just an hour at most. Her voice hesitated, then carefully corrected herself. No, half an hour is enough. Just this time, okay? I've never heard her use such a tone, almost pleading. In the end, I still agree. I didn't want Lam Mok Due to know my school, so I chose a small Chinese restaurant and sent her the address. When I arrived, Lam Mok Due arrived first. At noon, there were hardly any people on the street, but Lam Mok Due stood outside the small restaurant, standing on the side of the road under the harsh sunlight. I got out of the car and looked from afar at the silhouette of people on the side of the road. I'm not nearsighted, but I kept looking and still didn't recognize her. Really losing too much weight. Almost sickly, a bit strange. I stood in place for a long time, looking at her, really having a hard time determining whether I recognized the wrong person or not, until she also noticed me and turned to look. We faced each other for a long time. She didn't speak, making me even more unable to hold back, wondering if I had really made a mistake, until the woman walked towards me. Her voice seemed to tremble slightly. You're here. The familiar voice made me finally confirm that it was indeed Lam Mok Due. Maybe it was my hallucination. I seemed to see the corners of her eyes turn red. In an instant, her face, previously famous for being flawless, was now so thin that it was gaunt. I really couldn't help but ask, what's wrong with you? You've lost so much weight. Lam Mok Due turned away and walked ahead to lead me inside. I heard her voice. The company has advertising activities and appearances, so you have to lose weight. Don't boys know best? The thinner you are, the better suited the lens. I really disagree, but it shouldn't be reduced to this level. What's more, with her previous personality, she absolutely wouldn't care about whether the lens matched or not. Maybe it's because this advertising activity is important. The food has already been ordered. When we entered, food began to be placed on the table. The meal took place in silence. I really don't know what else to say to her now. As for her, she kept her head down as she ate, frowning. I thought the food was not to my taste. She glanced up and noticed her left palm. She was pressing on her stomach, clearly holding back, but still shaking violently. It was cool in the room, but the cold sweat on her temples was already running down her face. I was extremely surprised. What's wrong? Are you suddenly unwell? Lam Mok Due started to turn pale, but she let go, holding her stomach, facing my eyes, smiling. It's okay. Maybe just a little cold. I saw that her face was really bad. Or stop eating, go to the hospital. She immediately hurried. Not even half an hour. I couldn't help it. Are you really okay? Lam Mok Due nodded, his expression relaxed. It's really okay. I feel much better now. There is wine on the table. She reached out to take it. I quickly raised my hand to stop her. Don't drink anymore. Your heart is not good. Lam Mok Due retracted her hand. She turned to look at me, remained silent for a long time, not saying a word. I don't know if it was because of the heat from the food in the small restaurant that blurred my vision, I seemed to see tears in Lam Mokdu's eyes. I suddenly felt awkward, turned away, and continued to eat with my head down. Suddenly I thought, maybe she didn't really intend to drink at all, just so I could say that. Lam Mokdu's voice rang in my ear. 5 years ago, I misunderstood you. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry for the debts I owed to you in those 5 years. I heard Bok Nin say that Lam Mokdu thought I called her dirty, so I didn't want to marry her. I can't forget those 5 years of hardship and struggle, but even now I can say I hate them. Just let go. I replied, it's all in the past. Lam Mokdu held a glass to drink water. I saw her arm still shaking slightly. I still couldn't help but speak up again. What happened that year was not your fault. Lam Mokdu, those shadows are gone, live well. Lam Mokdu bowed his head and continued drinking water. After a while, she looked up. After eating, she tried to give me a bank card. I didn't accept it, said I didn't need it. Several times she tried to say something but stopped, finally putting the card back. When the bus was about to arrive, she suddenly called me from behind. Tugi. I turned around to look at her. She smiled, want a hug. I instinctively refused. No need. The bus stopped next to me. Lam Mokdu stepped in front of me, pulled the corner of his mouth. Just kidding, don't mind. When I got in the car, I heard her behind me say, you've lost a lot of weight, remember to eat more. She herself is that skinny, yet she can still say such things. I said yes and sat in the car. Through the car window, I saw her still standing outside, silently looking at me. I really didn't think that look would be the last. The next afternoon, I suddenly received a phone call from Bok Nin. She asked me, Lam Mokdu's body, do you want to come see it? I just finished a big class, walked out of the lecture hall. I couldn't hear the noise clearly. Asked again, what belongs to Lam Mokdu? I walked to the end of the hallway. There were no more teachers and students passing by. The surroundings became quiet. I clearly heard Bok Nin repeat those words, Lam Mokdu's body. That night, after I went to the house to celebrate and watch Lam Mokdu, I suddenly had a high fever. I suddenly realized that the times Lam Mokdu almost begged and insisted on meeting me once was to say goodbye. When they came to my house, they said I had a distant cousin who left behind a huge amount of property that no one inherited. They found out the family tree and left the property to me. I didn't suspect anything and immediately reported it to the police. As a result, the police and courts verified many sides but determined that the situation was real. Everything was unbelievable. In the morning, I was still calculating the details of this year's 1-month installment payment, and in the afternoon, I vaguely inherited a stranger's billions of assets. Cakes fell from the sky, eventually making me nervous and guilty about receiving them. I keep enough money to last me the rest of my life. The rest, with the help of the police and the court, I donated all of it, using it for the life and treatment of orphans, poor children, as well as the sick and weak. At the end of that year, I went to the orphanage to visit the children and adopted a 5-year-old girl. The girl was very compatible with me. As soon as we met, she grabbed the hem of my shirt. I took her home. The small house was no longer cold and deserted. The following year, on Tonmin Day, I took Bao and Bok Nin to the cemetery to burn incense for her grandmother. I have no relatives, no one to worship, so I have to rely on someone else's grandmother. On Qingming Day, the cemetery was very crowded, with offerings placed in front of almost every grave. There is only one grave next to Bok Nin's grandmother's grave that is cold, empty, and has nothing. Little Bao, perhaps feeling sympathy, placed a few small flowers picked on the side of the road on that grave. When we got up to leave, there was a wind in the cemetery. Baby Bao suddenly pulled my shirt and said, Dad, that flower is chasing you. I bowed my head and saw the flower Little Bao placed on the strange grave blown by the wind to my feet. Little Bao picked up the flower and placed it back on the grave. The weather became cold and a bit windy. I took off my coat and wrapped it tightly around Baby Bao, while I silently used myself as I walked out of the cemetery. The wind blew back, stinging the corners of my eyes. My tears suddenly fell without control.